everybody. Welcome to Soldiers of Cinema, the podcast. I'm Clark Coffey, and with me today, as always, Cullen McFader. What's up, Cullen?
Hello. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. On today's episode, we are going to be discussing Herzog's Masterclass Lesson 9, which is all about set rules. Ooh, exciting stuff. Set rules. You love rules, right, Cullen? You're like a big
I'm a rules guy.
No, but there is some really good some great content in here. You know, especially, I mean, we kind of imagine that most of the listeners here, you're either obviously interested in Herzog, or you are an aspiring or filmmaker, maybe in the beginning of your career, and he covers some really important stuff in this lesson. So we'll kind of dive in, but basically, you know, he talks about how to organize a set. And Herzog talks about himself personally, being a one camera guy. He actually specifically calls out Mr. Christopher Nolan by name. And clearly he is fond of Mr. Nolan, I think, because now it's funny, though, of course, because I think Nolan, in a lot of his action scenes in his films, uses like 20 cameras.
Yeah, just rigs them up, yeah.
Which is, but you know, hey, there's always exceptions to the rule. But I think, you know, unless he's shooting a special effects shot or a big action scene, I think he, you know, I'm actually not sure. Do you know? Does he stick to one camera? Does Nolan?
I
mean,
think,
for sure,
I mean, as far as I know,
yeah.
for his like dialogue and his moment to moment stuff, that's not, you know, a huge effect shot where you're spending $2 million for a single shot. I do believe that it's one camera.
So we'll go with that. We'll say, okay, Herzog, okay.
What I do think is interesting, though, about even just the name of this lesson being set rules is that it's not really traditional set rules, even in the, like, it's almost like Herzog says, like, break certain kind of trends to make your set work better, which I think is interesting. It's not
absolutely.
You know, the PA's got the coffee, the guy over there sits in the chair. Yeah.
Yep. And we'll definitely get into that. But right, I think it's about, you know, I mean, you could almost say this is, you know, Herzog's take on how to create a conducive environment for great filmmaking. Yeah. Which, you know, with that being the focus, as opposed to, you know, sometimes rules on a set can actually lead away from that. So we can definitely discuss that. But I think, you know, it's about creating an attitude of focus as well. And I think that's, you know, he also mentions Nolan shoots film, celluloid. And of course, I know he definitely does that. Yeah. And I think, you know, Herzog has shot all kinds of different medium.
And Nolan shoots film for interesting reasons, too. It's
right?
It's not exactly
Yeah,
well, it's not normally. I mean, a lot of people that shoot film because they like the look of it, right? That they like the grain, they like the texture. Whereas Nolan has
focus.
Several times on record both the focus, but he also, it's almost just like a traditional thing for him, like that he doesn't like grain in his images, so he likes the newest Kodak stocks that have very little grain, and he also, but I think it's just his kind of way of going, like, this is how movies were made and should be made, and it's sort of like a traditional.
And I think, you know, Herzog talks about an attitude of focus, and you know, I don't know explicitly if Nolan has come out and said this, but I know other filmmakers have. Now, I myself have not shot on film. I've been a part of projects that did shoot on film. I can tell you that there is a radical difference on set. Between shooting film, I mean, especially 35 millimeter film, and shooting digitally. Digital shots you can shoot all day long, and it's just a matter of hard drive space, right? But when you're running celluloid through the gate, I mean, it's a lot of money, you know,
a lot
going
of pressure.
down. Yeah, and
I mean, I've got a K3 16 millimeter camera sitting right beside me right now, and it's like shooting on that thing. I do it very rarely because
you've got a mean business. Yeah. It's you absolutely. It's not just for fun. And I mean, it's, you know, for anybody out there that still shoots with a film still camera, you know what we mean. You know, look at the types of pictures that people shoot with their cell phones. Oh my God. You know, it's like I wonder how many, like, I don't even know what comes after like terabyte but geez, our world is just filled with useless, ridiculous images of people's food or whatever else that, you know, because like pictures don't cost anything to take anymore. You know, I feel like when there was film, you would kind of, you know, you'd curate your images more carefully. Well, that's certainly what happens, I think, when you're shooting a
oh, absolutely. And not to divert too much, but in relation to that, that's the exact reason why most of the time if I'm on vacation, I'll bring film camera and a couple of rolls of film, because I don't want to be just looking through a camera the whole time. I want, if I'm taking a picture, it's going to be a very special moment. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for that reason, I think that definitely can contribute. But, Herzog also talks about some other interesting things here. He talks about not having a director's chair. He actually uses the word loathes. He loathes this, to have his name on a chair, and to have every actor and, producer have an area to like sit in and everything. I mean, I think it sounds like there's probably a couple reasons, if I read into this a little bit, that he doesn't like that kind of stuff. I think, Herzog definitely wants his shoots to be a physical event, an athletic endeavor, if you will.
And he doesn't like that diva stuff. He doesn't like
And so whether it's like fancy trailers and, your embossed director's chairs and all this kind of stuff, I mean, what does that have to do with filmmaking? What does that have to do with getting an image on screen? Oh, it really doesn't, right? It has nothing to do with it. And then you open up all these areas of, introducing hierarchy, and this person is worth more or more valuable than that person, or why is this trailer, this person's trailer bigger than mine, or blah, 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 blah. And these things can just, even on a smaller level, right? If you're shooting, very low budget, micro budget films, and you're not dealing with trailers and things, there can be stuff like this get in the way, though, on a smaller scale. And so I do think it's a good idea you can save yourself money and you can save yourself drama by kind of just staying away from this whole area,
And how it's sort of almost like a trickle down effect that he talks about, where it's like, if he doesn't have a director's chair, then everybody else might be kind of embarrassed or feel awkward about sitting in theirs, right?
I mean, how old is Herzog? How old is Herzog right now, too?
76,
he's in his 70s.
Or 72. He's either 72 or 70. I think I looked this up the other day.
Yeah, he's in his 70s. I mean, we can say that for sure. He's in his 70s. And so I'm thinking, okay, if a guy in his mid-70s is not going to sit down between takes, if he's going to be doing it, then, if you're a 25-year-old actor on one of his projects, you're probably going to feel a little embarrassed if you've got to go, get in your super comfy trailer or your, embossed fancy, director's chair. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But and there's a line, though. There's a line right between, like, no creature comforts or no, I mean, you don't want to go so far as to like say, that you're not going to provide crafty for people, or, I mean, obviously there's a line here, right?
I mean, my philosophy on it is basically, I want the set to be as comfortable as I can, but I want that comfort to contribute to work. I don't want it to contribute to...
And be equally applied to every single person on set. And certainly, not indulging in things like this, I think, make that a lot easier to achieve, for sure. He also talks about this one. This one's really interesting to me. Getting into video villages. Some people swear by them. Some people love them. Some people, and Herzog, of course, is in the opposite camp. He does not use a video village. And he absolutely thinks that those are totally distracting and separate the director from actors. What's your take? Do you have?
It's one of the times on his more sort of very, very concrete views that I totally 100% agree with him. Yeah. I've worked on a lot of sets with video villages, and I've worked on some, like when I lead a set, I don't like any of that stuff. I don't really like monitors. I'm sort of in the middle ground in a way that I like to have my video village is an iPad in my hands with a wireless monitor. That's what I like, because I enjoy if I'm not operating. Normally I try to operate as much as I can, but if I'm not operating and I'm away from the camera, then I'm beside the camera with the handheld monitor in my hands, and just so I can see the shot and the framing and all that. But no, like I think that, and I've worked on sets where it's like the director's off in the video village, a take will happen, and you just kind of hear like a shout, like, yeah, that was good, let's go again.
Like far away.
And it's like, you're not there, you're not sitting beside them going, that you should be close. And, that's like a bad word now because we're in the middle of this pandemic, but in normal times you should be, I like to be physically as close as I can to kind of feel that energy. And,
and I have to agree. And I've never worked, I've never worked on a project myself where I had a separate, video village that was far away from the shooting. I've had monitors, small monitors next to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting, and we could kind of, I'm going to be kind of exploring this and thinking about this out loud right now in real time, because I don't, I don't know that I've got my ideas about this completely perfectly, polished and formulated, but and it's difficult to articulate, but there's a feeling. There is certainly a feeling about whether I'm operating or whether, and for me, my experience is more that I'm not operating, but I'm directing right next to the camera. Mm-hmm. There's something about, and maybe this comes from my experience in theater and directing actors on stage, but I feel that it's so important for me to be in an intimate communion with the actors and almost like in the scene with them.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, I'm behind the camera. I'm definitely not in the scene.
Yeah, your shoulders just peeking in
there. But there's something about but feeling their energy, right?
Yes.
To be right there and to be able to witness all of these nuances of the performances as they're happening live right there somehow helps me feel almost like another actor. I guess I almost feel like I'm in the scene with them.
I think for me too, it's a lot of it is I don't like feeling tethered, if that makes sense. I don't like feeling tethered to anything. So again, that's why one of my first purchases when I got a fully fledged cinema camera was a wireless video transmitter, so that I could, exactly what you're saying. It's
so
like I
handy.
could be right there, but I've got the, rather than having to peek around and look at somebody else's monitor or the viewfinder or whatever, if I'm not operating, I can just have the monitor in my hand and walk wherever I want. If I want to set an eye line for an actor, I can literally have the monitor in my hand and put my hand up and go, nope, that looks good. That looks perfect right there.
But you're still able to be right there in the action.
I'm still right beside them. Yeah.
I feel like that's probably the best of both worlds because, and Herzog talks about, and I really think this is, if you can afford it, this is really helpful, is to have somebody else, an assistant director, somebody, I don't know who this might be for your crew, depending on their size and everything, but to have, somebody actually really focused on watching that output and just making sure that the technical aspects of the shot, just purely technical aspects of the shot are meeting expectation, right? So it's just, watching focus, framing, that kind of thing. And maybe some, the consistency, script consistency, that kind of continuity things, stuff like that. And so I think that could be important. I've certainly got myself, because if talking about, only the good aspects of being right there in the action and not looking at an output at a video monitor. I mean, I have in the past missed some technical things because I was so focused on the performances. I got so into being right there with the actors that I did miss things. And so did the operator, missing focuses and things like that, which make me crazy. Oh, I can't. Yeah.
Even working documentary, that was kind of one of the things that we established when I was down in LA and we were shooting was that, I was sort of, I asked a few questions, but I was sort of doing the technical side, making sure that everything was in focus and that the lighting was, even and that the sound sounded good.
Exactly.
And you were focusing on getting those interviews done and things like that. And I think it worked out so well because that way, and I mean, we completely trusted each other in that way that you weren't coming over checking shot. I wasn't, involved in your interview process. I was just kind of, we had very
great. That's a great example.
Systems,
and it's vital because you cannot do all these things. Now, and we're going to go into a little bit about keeping a crew small. But the flip side of that is that you do have to have enough people to actually, reach a certain level of competency in all these areas. And it's, and I've done, on videography work, which is definitely a different thing than making a film. Videography work is definitely different when you're shooting commercials, industrial. Obviously, there are some similarities, but there are some differences, and we can, talk about that a little bit. For example, is this single camera stuff. And I want to bring this up because, it's just a practical aspect of being a filmmaker is that, a lot of times when you're starting out, you've got to make ends meet. And a great way to make ends meet that also helps get you experience is to do videography work wherever you're at, shooting local commercials, industrials, employee training videos, whatever it might be, right? Web content for small business owners or something in your area. And when I shoot those kind of things, I definitely like to go multi-camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because most of this stuff, a lot of this stuff is interviews, and you're dealing with, non-professional people, or, they're not trained on camera personalities. You're often working from looser scripts, things like this. And I don't know, I don't know if you've done some work in this area or you have experience, but I definitely like to go multi-camera there because I find that it saves your booty big time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even, and that's like, even in that aspect though, there's so many different, styles of that. Like there's this hugely, almost like this cinematic new wave coming into advertising. That now, things are now.
I don't get exposed. Can you describe that a little bit? I mean, I want to be honest. I am out of the loop a little bit on this. I have kind of crafted a world for myself in a world where there's no advertising. But I have. I mean, I have reduced my exposure to advertising to such an extent that I really don't know. What is this new?
I mean, I don't really watch TV, so I'm not sure about actual TV ads, but things I've seen, like, and Sick Kids here, the children's hospital in Toronto.
We've actually been there. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a wonderful place. Yeah.
They've just done this whole, in the last year or year and a half, this whole new advertising campaign that's like shot on anamorphic lenses, like these like crazy like cinematic lighting. Everything's hazed, and it's really it's like the kids standing up to their illnesses. It's called Sick Kids Versus. It's quite an effective ad campaign if anyone's interested in looking at it.
Is Ridley Scott directing? Whenever I hear might
smoke, as well.
I think.
Although Ridley doesn't like anamorphic anymore, so but yeah, and it's this, and the only reason I've been exposed to these things is just because some of the work that I've been doing has sort of been related and in that kind of that field. So. There is this huge, like, the amount of commercials these days that are shot on anamorphic is something that really has only picked up in the past maybe 3 years.
And I know, and then to bookend that on the other end, not to again to get too far off the track here of Herzog's class, but it touches on a lot of things, so why not? But there's also a lot, I know, living out here in Southern California with COVID and everything, there's also a lot of almost, I would call it like DIY commercials being done where actors are shooting their own commercials in their homes. I know that this is being done to some extent, so you've got a wide range, because it's, obviously, agencies aren't going to stop shooting commercials just because they can't get a crew together, right? That you're not going to stop that train. And so one of the ways they've gotten around it is to have people kind of self-shoot or to, remotely piece together a project. But it's, on a much smaller scale, sometimes with much less quote-unquote professional equipment. So it can run the gamut,
Oh, totally.
For sure. But
I mean, just to return to the point of it, just the single cam versus multicam. Yeah. I think for me, getting into like why do I prefer one over the other.
Yeah.
When it comes to narrative film, I find that, and I think that Herzog does sort of touch on this as well, and as have many other directors who prefer single cam. If I'm doing a shot, if I'm lighting a shot or I'm composing a shot, I like to compose for that shot, that camera that's there.
No compromise, right? If you've got multiple cameras, you are inevitably compromising your mise en scène. Absolutely. Boy, not to get like too mise en scène. It's been a while. I don't know why that popped in. But yeah, I mean, you're right. And I think that's one of the biggest, it's one of the biggest drawbacks. You're kind of dividing all of your resources.
I mean, even down to just the placement of a light and going, oh, well, that shadow looks off in that other shot.
Even your actors' performances, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you've got multiple points of focus, i.e. the camera, then you're going to kind of inevitably you're going to be dividing your focus, your inner, so absolutely.
I mean, it gets down to it just because it's easy or just because it's easier doesn't mean that it's better. I know a lot of people who do prefer multicam, and they go, if I'm shooting a dialogue scene, and there are benefits to it. I understand the desire to be like, hey, if these two people are having a conversation at this table,
especially if the's
let's
improv.
get the
if there's a lot of improvisation, multi-camera is can be a lifesaver in a sense.
Yeah, but even non-improvisational stuff, it's like, I can see the desire of now we're getting both of the reactions and the performances to the same performance at the same time.
In editing, though, I so rarely ever. I mean, I so rarely. Let me say it another way. I will so often cut up takes.
Yes, I don't really cross-cut a lot to the same take. Yeah,
I can't imagine. Right, I've got so many takes within one. It's within one scene when it's actually edited that I don't. That's not when it's scripted. It's not a big deal for me because I will often cut everything up anyway because it's usually you're taking the best pieces of different performances, and having a multi-camera situation there probably wouldn't have added a lot to that.
And that being said too, I mean, I've never found myself in the editing room going, damn, this reaction doesn't match up to this performance. Like it's usually actors are pretty good at getting that stuff down. So I've never had those issues that people kind of praise multicam for so often. I've never really needed to rectify those things.
But everything, but like we said, everything has a place. I do use it when I'm shooting industrials, doing interviews of, people who aren't used to being on camera. And so there's a lot of it's incongruency from one shot to from one take to the next. So I will do, and also usually you're on somebody else's schedule. You have a very compressed period of time. I'm often not in control of my shooting environment because I'm shooting on somebody else's location. So, so there's a lot of compromises there. But
shooting on other people's locations, and there's a ton.
Yep. So let's see where we'll go. After this large digression here. So we were talking about video villages. Yeah, I think just to kind of maybe wrap that one up. I think so. It sounds like we both agree. I mean, I definitely prefer to be right there with the actors for reasons I just told, and it sounds like you do too. And I think a good compromise is to have a monitor there close to you. And I do not have a wireless monitor, but God, that's got to be great.
And they're not really that expensive too. I was shocked when I got one.
Yeah. So yeah, good stuff. Let's see. Talking about this is huge, and especially again we're talking about probably smaller budget filmmaking, keeping the crew small. I mean, and I feel like there are more reasons to do this than just budget, but obviously
I was gonna say I think we both agree that even on a bigger budget, the crew for me, and I think Herzog says this as well, is that the crew, I want it to be as small as possible.
Yeah. And I think, it is interesting. And, Herzog speaks to this in the lesson, and I have noticed this too. And even with, $50,000 or $100,000 budget films, still very small budgets, micro budgets, but there's almost, and I don't know exactly, put my finger on exactly why this is. I mean, I think it's like when we were kids, or when we're younger and we first get this inkling that we want to be filmmakers, and whatever era of film that you kind of grew up in, whether it's like Spielberg or Lucas or Coppola, I don't know, whoever, but you have this kind of like grand idea that you want to be this big filmmaker and command this giant, platoon of crew and cast, and we hear all these stories about like these epic films where hundreds of people were working on them, and it was and I feel like there is some kind of pull I've noticed where there's this like pull for crews to expand, to get bigger,
totally,
when they don't really necessarily have to be. And I don't know, my only explanation for it sometimes is just that it feels more professional, that it feels like a bigger production. I think
a lot of times people just assume that if the more hands on set, then the faster it's going to be and the more efficient. And it's like, I find the complete opposite, though. I find that
to a point. To a point,
of course. So I wouldn't want to be doing a feature with myself and like one other guy. But
I mean, you do have to have your fundamental bases covered. Yeah. And I will just and I will highlight sound here because I feel like it gets overlooked so much. So definitely don't skimp on your sound team.
Yes.
Throwing that there, just throwing that in.
Well, there's a really interesting interview on YouTube with the key grip, the lighting technician, and the gaffer of Phantom Thread, which was Paul Thomas Anderson's most recent movie that came out in 2017.
Yeah,
there's this great interview. So it's like 2 hours long, and it's just them talking about the process of making it. And it's great. Now
say this again for people, because people who are interested, I'd like to be able to point them to it. So it's a YouTube video. And
if you just look up Phantom Thread, lighting gaffer behind the scenes.
Gotcha.
You should be able to find it. It's like a 2-hour kind of almost like a podcast video, but video.
Now, is this isn't like featurette stuff from the
no.
Blu-ray.
This is them. They did like
they
did like a live stream on YouTube.
Check that out. Yeah.
But it's this really interesting thing because they do talk in there about how PTA also likes to keep the set small, and they actually didn't even use a cinematographer on that movie. It was PTA did kind of a collaboration with, again, his lighting technician and his key gaffer or key grip and gaffer, and they all kind of made the lighting and the cinematography
I'd be curious, themselves. This is an area that I don't have a ton of experience in, and I'm just curious if you do, or maybe if anybody out there listening does, you could kind of write to us. But I directors who do their own operating from a union guild perspective, I know there might be some challenges there, but I'm not really sure what that is or how you get. I just know that there've been some issues in the past where directors have wanted to operate, and that can kind of be an issue. But
legally, I have no idea. I'd assume that's stuff that you can probably work out in the contract too. That like you could put stipulations in there that
negotiations with the guilds. Yeah.
Because I mean I've never really even thought. I've never anything that I've ran, a set that I've ran, I've never done union.
Yeah.
Because in Canada, which is a little different than the States, you actually can't mix union and non-union workers. If you're doing a non-union set, you can't have anybody.
Here.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of a difference here, is that you have to, like, if I'm doing a non-union thing, union workers could get in trouble for actually working on that. But no, I'm not sure about the actual like stipulations in terms of like rules around operating and things like that. But
suffice to say, worth looking into for sure. Of course, if you're if that's your goals. But
I do think it's interesting though that, again, it's one of these things where it's like you have a movie like Phantom Thread that is quite small scale in the grand scheme of things, but still larger budget. Multi-million-dollar movie.
Absolutely.
But that. They said that there were cases where there were like 8 or 9 people on set, like that it was so tiny, and it was really nice to. It almost felt like you were back in like a almost like a learning session where you're like sitting there and you're just it's just you and a few friends being like, let's do this and let's figure this out. And I think that speaks to a lot of things that at least I am attracted to about filmmaking.
And I would say, it's obviously there are types of films that lend themselves to smaller, crews and casts than others, of course. You're going to be hard pressed to put together a Marvel movie without utilizing like 1,000+ people's talents.
Yeah, you're going to be hard pressed to put on a Marvel movie, period. But
well, for sure. But it's one of the things I think is so vital as a director is that we talked about this in other episodes, is this, that you're kind of the holder of the vision, right? This flame that is the vision. And your goal is to share that, is to communicate it. And not just communicate it so that people understand it, but communicate it so that people are also ignited by it, that they're inspired by it. And the more people that you've got on set, the harder that is to do.
Yeah.
It's just, and this is just the nature of, you can only spend so much time with so many people in a day. And so if you're running a set with 200 people, you're likely not even going to know many of those people, much less, be able to spend time with them to really ignite them.
I mean, it's, of course, too, especially neither of us are famous, but I can imagine, I've heard Spielberg. Sorry, I was just trying to be humble for myself. But,
okay, I got you. Yeah, that's good.
But I've heard Spielberg
You're sitting in a director's chair right now.
Yeah, actually, Herzog is listening to me nodding slowly. He's right to my left. He's like, read, and then you can hear him.
Oh my god! I'm sorry. Please continue.
I've heard Spielberg talk about this, that there's sometimes issues where it's like he is directing on a set and the extras or some kind of technicians or something will come up to him and start trying to have conversations with him about his movie because his past movies because he's Steven Spielberg, and it's like, oh, what was it like to make Jaws and things like that. And so I can imagine from a larger filmmaker's perspective, or like even like Herzog and people like that, is that there's another reason to want to keep your set small, and that's just
beggars and
limiting distractions.
And distractions. But you're right. So you and I and many people listening here might not have that particular challenge. But yeah, I mean, and I think I mean, for me at least, everybody runs a set in slightly different ways. We have different personalities, of course, and but even going back to my earlier days in directing theater, I feel it's important that there be a very like a strong cohesion, almost like a family.
Yeah.
And that's how I enjoy filmmaking, and that's how I personally feel like better filmmaking is made. Obviously there are fantastic films made where the stories of on-set behavior and the conditions on set are atrocious and horrible, and there's still fantastic films come out the other end. But I think in general, those films come out fantastic in spite of, not because of. That's
exactly.
Me personally, and also too, look, life is short. I don't want to spend my time working on sets where it's not fun, where people.
I'm working on these things because I like to do it. I don't don't know why anyone would want to work on a set where you're
not in that way, right? There's a difference between a challenge, and just full on torture. But I think it's easier to, to maintain a read on the morale of a crew and help, not manipulate, but help affect morale in a positive direction. All of these things are easier when you've got a smaller cast.
And I even want to say that too, with like flexibility. It's much more easy to say we're changing this shot. Let's do it this way. And when you don't have to go down the line of 100 people and say, okay, we need the 6 technicians to go up on that scissor lift and change that light.
Right.
Blah,
well,
blah,
just
blah,
transportation, blah. Right? Just changing locations is a nightmare if you've got, more people that can fit in a couple vans. Everything becomes more difficult. Everything takes more time.
It does. It weirdly reminds me too of the difference between working somewhere like a larger restaurant, and this is a little bit of an anecdote, but a larger restaurant versus a smaller, still kind of, fancier with an asterisk restaurant, but the difference there being so immense, because it's like on one hand you've got this huge place that's basically like a factory, like you're just churning stuff out. On the other hand, you're
like
still
a McDonald's.
you're still maintaining this quality, but on the other hand, you're in a smaller place, you're still, again, it's like that family thing. Like you don't have a concern with getting someone to come help you out with something or move a table or whatever. And I think it's the same way in film. I think that you're gonna have, it's just more personal on the level of like you can't really avoid anybody, so you're gonna have to get along with them,
which sometimes could be an issue, but hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Well, that's when it comes into your hiring. That's
and of course, look, I think most of us, it's not even a choice. Most of us who are in the earlier parts of their career, that's obviously upper echelons. There are fewer and fewer directors who get to work with millions of dollars in budget and, even have the option. So I think for most of us, it's not even a question. But feel good about the fact that even if you did have that money, this is likely the best way to work. I think, one of the ways that you can cut down on some crew, and this kind of combines both the aspect of being right next to the action, being right with your actors, and not being in a video village and having a small crew. Herzog talks about, he really emphasizes this, doing your slates and your last looks yourself.
Yes.
And I completely agree with this. I mean, this is great advice. Now, I hadn't even thought about this, frankly, until I watched this masterclass for the first time, however many years ago. What was that, 4 years ago, 5 years ago? But I took this to heart, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
I highly recommend this. And, for all the reasons that he states in this lesson, to be kind of, and I think this is great. For me, the most important part of it is that, and Herzog uses a great kind of, tells a little story about how he can do this, about being like the last line between between action and your cast, to really be there with them and to have that intuitive sense, to be close enough that you're intuiting their energy, their readiness for a scene, where they're at, and to be able to buffer them from everything, all the chaos that's kind of going on around them, which is already a challenge for an actor. You and I both have some acting experience, and you're working to kind of give yourself a bubble, so to speak, to be in, to maintain your emotional states in this chaotic environment that is filmmaking. And that can really be a challenge. And I think it's so vital for the director It helps you strengthen your bonds with your actors, and and to be there to kind of defend them. And Herzog uses this great little story about how he could kind of tell an actor still needs a few moments, and instead of making them the center of attention and saying, wait, everybody, our actor here needs more time. They're not ready.
You make something up. Yeah.
Just right. It says, hey, no, we need to, can you double check this filter? Or, can let me, and he goes and fiddles with something in the background or something for a minute, just to make something up to
give
take
them
a few
chance.
moments.
Yeah.
But that's such a wonderful idea. And obviously you've got to use this kind of, with some common sense and, sparingly, but those
you
kind
wouldn't
of
want
things
to just go out and do it every take, but
take, But these things really, I think that, again, at least for me, and maybe because my orientation to all of this is so actor focused for me, but I feel like all of these things, being right there next to the camera, next to the action, slating, being that last line or that buffer between the actors and action, I feel like really, really help endear you to your actors. They help you bond with them, which I think is so key, and help your actors feel safe.
Yes, yeah. Safety is a huge thing. Not even just safety in terms of like physical safety, but just safe emotionally.
Emotionally safe, right? It's this, and it's and especially I can't, obviously it's vital for any level of filmmaking, but I feel like it is such a vital aspect of filmmaking, and at some of the, more introductory levels where you're maybe working with actors with less experience under their belt, and it's actors need all the help they can get in the sense that whatever you can do to make that environment a conducive one. I mean, it's fragile. Like what an actor does is a delicate business.
Well, I always describe it sort of as like, it's like a rocket launch. Like there's this huge amount of pressure when you're counting down from 20 and you're going down, and it's like you should be the mission control.
Yeah.
The actor should just be able to sit in that rocket and be launched when it happens. You should be the one that's checking on all the valves and checking on the
quiet, safe little capsule.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that analogy. That's a good one. So I told, it's like I said, I didn't do this before I watched this lesson, but I have really grown to love this idea. Mm-hmm. What about you? Is this something that you practiced before the lesson, or do you practice it at all now, or kind of?
I don't know. I don't usually do. Usually I'll leave the slate for the first AD. Mm-hmm. That's because normally I don't have somebody on script supervision or anything like that. So the first AD will do that. But I do. I think I understand, and I try and go with the idea of this that you should be like, I normally after slate and all that, I will take a moment and as is pretty standard, take a moment to just kind of have everything relax, and then we're now on my time and the actor's time, and then I say either when you're ready or action whenever I feel appropriate. But there's this kind of there's an understanding where you kind of get like one last look at the.
You probably have one of those actors. Like megaphones, don't you? Or what do you?
I do. I don't have one of electronic ones, though. I've got one of the old timey like.
Yeah, that's
cones.
what I mean.
Yeah.
You have a beret. I'm hoping you have a beret
and ascot
safari, like an ascot with like a safari vest that has like your viewfinders and everything.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I just want people at home to be able to
picture me.
Picture you. Yeah.
No, I do think that it's really important though. Like again, I've never done slates myself unless I'm the only person that's able to do them.
But you're still there.
I'm there, and I understand the sentiment of it, and I think I just, if anything, just sort of take a slightly altered approach to it.
That's fair. Yeah. That's completely fair. I mean, there's multiple ways to do that. I think it's absolutely. Yeah, and as part of this. Herzog talks about eye lines, so protecting actors, and definitely, I mean, this is, again, and I think you and I a couple episodes ago talked about the importance of actually taking some acting training and doing some acting yourself. And when you do this, I think you'll really realize keenly how important it is to protect or defend your actor's eye lines.
Totally. Absolutely.
And of course, there's, the Christian Bale story, of course, when that happened, that made the rounds everywhere. And I think a lot of people thought, and it's interesting to hear Herzog defend Christian Bale here. Obviously, they've worked together, and Herzog is obviously fond of him. But and I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, you've ever heard of Christian Bale, misbehaving. Like,
no,
not that this even is, but they've never even heard of him being this way before or since, right?
I can sort of, not to say that you should be speaking to anybody the way he's speaking to them, but I do, in a way, empathize with
absolutely
why you would be like, I can't imagine being in the middle of a scene as an actor or as a director or as anybody on set and seeing somebody fiddle with a light on camera,
or on their cell phone, texting, or right in your eye line. And just for people to kind of understand, again, I think it's important to do some acting yourself, and you'll see. But again, it's as a director, so much of your job is creating this safe place for your actors. And a huge part of that is protecting their eye lines. And, we're going to talk about this, but keeping phones and walkies away, keeping, when you have larger sets, we've talked about the importance of a smaller crew or how that can be beneficial. Well, definitely one of those ways it's beneficial is that you don't have 50 people standing around doing nothing on their cell phones, right, when you're shooting. To minimize all these distractions, to minimize all these when you've got a smaller crew, everybody has something to do almost every moment. You have a large crew, you're going to have people standing around doing nothing, twiddling their thumbs. Well, in today's day and age, it's going to be that they're going to be on their phone. But and it's so of course, if we all know that Christian Bale, what film was he? Was it one of the Batman films? What film?
No, it was Terminator Salvation.
Terminator, that's right. And actually, oh man, I'm blanking out, but it was actually a fairly famous DP who was futzing around.
Oh yeah.
Who was it? Come on, help me out. Anyway, he's got his own series of classes online.
Yes,
and I'm totally spacing out, and somebody out there can
Shane Hurlbut.
Yes,
Shane Hurlbut. Yeah.
If I'm not,
he's got
mistaken,
the Hurlbut Academy.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it was probably, and he was futzing with some lights during a take. And and it's well, horrible.
The other thing too is that a whole bunch of his co-cast, and not co-cast, but also crew members, stood up to defend Bale on that and said it wasn't. I mean, you're on such a high pressure set, especially with the amount of like effects and stuff like that in a situation like that I can understand.
Well, you're the look. At the end of the day, the actor is the person who's on that big screen.
Yeah.
And if the film sucks, let's face it, the actors are going to be catching a lot of that flack.
Yeah.
And even further than that, look, it's when in between action and cut, the actor, of course, is the absolute focal point, or actors are the focal point of the production, and the weight of all of that is on you right then and there. I mean, that's right. That's why everybody is there. Everybody is there to make those moments between action and cut count. And if you've got other, and so it's all on your shoulders. And if you can't rely on your crew to give you the space to perform when you're finally called to, that's no fun. But yeah, again, I'm like you. I would not suggest that anybody rant in that way, but I can certainly empathize with why he would. And for those people listening who maybe didn't quite understand why Christian Bale was doing that, that's why. And so just one more reason, I think, to be right there. If you're away at Video Village, if you're 50 feet away from the action that's taking place, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to see that and call it out. Yeah. And so just Herzog talks about keeping phones and walkies away, and this is something that's simple, and I couldn't agree more. Agree more.
Yeah.
And especially if you've got a small crew, it's pretty easy to do this. If anybody's going to be on their phone, then they have to be X feet away, or outside of the room or away from shooting. And I think this is almost, hopefully, would be common sense. But but not only phones are just horrifically distracted. Anyway, I could go on and on about how about how I'm kind of over it.
I always think it's the moment the phones come out on a set, or like even if you yourself look at a phone,
something's wrong.
Like it's
just that's a
it's
sign.
Gone.
It's a sign something's wrong. Right. It's like okay, wait a minute. Like I'm checking out. I got to get back into this. What's going on? And of course this happens. We're all human, and of course these moments kind of happen. But that's a really good point. It's like if you have the pull. Like if you feel this pull to get out your phone and check your social media or something while you're on a shoot, use that as a sign, use that as a signal to be like, well, okay, wait a minute. I'm checking out. What's up? Do I need to get some coffee? Am I do I need to remember why I'm here? Do I need to reignite my passion for the story we're telling? What's going on? If I can't be interested in it right now when we're actually shooting it, how can I expect an audience to be interested in it, when it's done? So,
and I think that the interesting thing about him too with Herzog is the scheduling that he does of his movies, and maybe that's a way to kind of quell that idea of there's no downtime, so there's not even a moment's notice to pull out your phone, and that's his idea of starting to shoot within 90 minutes of the call.
I love that,
which is a great idea, and it's a great and that's within. I mean, it's not like it's not like if they've got half an hour to spare, they're like, okay, everyone take 5. It's at the latest. Shooting as soon as possible, and then at latest 90 minutes, which I think is such a great,
I love this, and I am going to implement this on my next shoot.
Yeah.
I have definitely been on shoots, now not shoots that I was directing, but shoots where I was an actor, that we may not have started shooting until 3 hours after call.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
I can't tell you what I don't know, for lack of a better word, downer. I mean, it is just, there's already such an amount of tedium that takes place in a shoot, because this is just, it's the nature of the beast sometimes, especially as an actor, where you're kind of hurry up and wait. But I think that so much of what Herzog talks about, whether it's in his writing or, here on set, is about maintaining a sense of urgency. And I love that idea. And so I think on my next, when we get this horror film in production and we start shooting hopefully next year, I can't wait to try this.
Yeah. No, I'm going to utilize a lot of things that Herzog says in
well,
these.
Hitchcock too. I know you're a Hitchcock fan. That's okay.
Alfred Hitchcock Masterclass.
No, that would be if he could come back from.
Geez, let's get some resurrection there.
There you go.
But no, awesome. I do think that it's again, like I said, I think a huge aspect of that is. Just again, not giving people, not to say that you can't have downtime, but in that first, I would say 3 hour stretch of shooting is so vital that especially in a morning, that you really have to be all right, we're here, we're setting up, and we're shooting. We're not taking coffee breaks. We're not doing anything like that until we get through a chunk of our schedule today, and then we can do scheduled lunch, and
part of that too could be paying attention when you're in the process, when you're in pre-production and you're working on your shoot schedules, to keep in mind, so start from the beginning, right? Pre-production, that hey, we want to have the cameras rolling tops 90 minutes after call. So, be efficient in when you call people to set. That's another kind of side of this that I've seen in a little more amateur filmmaking, where not very much attention to detail was taken or consideration was taken for call times. And, everybody in the entire film was called to set, way before they were actually needed. It's just, kind of disrespectful, amateur. It's a waste of people's time.
Oh, yeah. I can't stand that stuff, yeah.
By the time people get to a scene, whatever, by the time they actually start working, it's, it's hard to maintain your energy sometimes. And it's just, you can really have kind of a trough there. So I think all the way around, it's a really powerful little tool. And so 90 minutes. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well,
and
speaking of
50 minutes for us. Yeah,
speaking of 90 minutes, we half that, just barely over half that. So we're really rocking. But I think we've covered pretty much everything
in that lesson. Yep.
In this lesson, Cullen, any last words here?
Read. Or should I say rules? No, I think that the things that Herzog say here, or things that he has said, are very interesting in terms of not.
This is
being
not a very
typical
controversial
rules.
one this time. I don't think.
Not very controversial,
really.
but also not rules that one would really. You think of set rules again. You think of like how to pass off a lens, how to sandbag a light stand, and things like that.
Right. And
this
definitely,
is much more,
and Herzog's Masterclass as a whole is not that kind of thing. And there are there are tons of places where you can get that kind of information, and those are good things to know. But really, his Masterclass is about the way I kind of describe it is it's about a philosophy of filmmaking.
Yes.
So certainly, if listeners here, if you haven't seen or heard his Masterclass at masterclass.com, and you're thinking about it, it is definitely more of a philosophy of filmmaking and of art as opposed to a really nuts and bolts,
like step by step
kind of thing like that. But there are so many places where you can go and get that kind of information for free, or do other things. You volunteer, or it's all little shoots you can go. And I mean, hell, I learned a lot when I first came out here just doing background work to be on a huge major studio set, television or film, or commercial. I did all three, and you can learn so much about those little nitty gritty things. But there's nowadays with YouTube and everything, my gosh, there's tons.
You can the Hurlburt Academy.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up here, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with us. We hope that it has been enjoyable. Cullen, thanks for being here. As
Glad
always,
to be here,
a treat. Especially just imagining you in your beret and your director's chair. It's just fills my heart with...
That's what I'm sitting in right now.
All right, guys. Well, until next time, where we will be, what are we going to be talking about next? I think next lesson is shooting strategy.
Yeah, all about shooting strategy. So you're kind of getting into the steps.
Here we are. We're like, now we're moving from pre-production to production. Exciting stuff. Yeah. Okay, so until then, we'll see you soon.
See you guys.